In this video, I want to talk about the actual requirements of a rhetorical analysis. I would like it to be an essay of at least 800 words and of at least 3 paragraphs. Now, those are um, minimum requirements, and you could do more than that. However, don't go too far over, because part of becoming a good writer is knowing what not to say and when to stop and how to work within a range of within a size range, a length range, if you will. So 800 words minimum. I think 1,500, 1,200 might be the ceiling for this. 3 to 5. You'll need to use 3 to 5 Super Bowl commercials. 3 being the minimum, 5 being a good number. If you actually run into 7 or 8, that could make your essay stronger. However, I don't just automatically grade essays that are longer and have more material in them automatically higher than I would, and I don't penalize essays that meet the minimum. If you meet the minimum, you're not going to be penalized, even though someone else might write twice as much. It just depends on what you're doing, how you're meeting the assignment. Okay, I depend on the actual process of you doing the assignment to be the real teaching tool here, and not necessarily my comments or feedback, which you may or may not want, and which may or may not be correct. Okay. Now, if you ever do want feedback on your writing, you should reach out to me via email or text. I think the last tool would be sending a message through Blackboard or Learn or Canvas or Brightspace, whichever LMS we're using. Although I see those messages once a week as well, but the fastest response would be texting, and then I will go back and find your essay and give you some verbal feedback. But I don't provide a lot of feedback to every essay at once, because I don't know what you're going to do with it, and I'm certainly not going to waste my time doing that if you're not going to look at it, which I think 50 to 60 to 70% of the students don't really pay attention to feedback. That's been my long-standing experience, and frankly, when I was in college, I didn't care much about feedback either. I wanted to discover and learn on my own. I wanted to dig it out of the ground on my own. Now, there were a few instances where I did receive valuable feedback. For most of it was just the teacher feeling the burden to have to write something on your paper, and I don't respect that sort of approach, all right, because it seems to be a bit mindless and driven by other pressures than actually working with a student who wants to grow as a writer. And we all don't want to. We don't want growth in just any area. I'm at the point in my life where I don't want to grow as an auto mechanic. So why would I want to get involved in an area where someone's trying to make me grow as an auto mechanic? So same thing with writing, I think, more or less. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to score your paper, and you're going to get a number back as your grade. And if you want, many of you are going to do fine with that. You just meet the basic requirements, get the essay in, you're going to make a good grade. But you have to meet the minimum, all right? So rhetorical analysis, at least 800 words, at least 3 Super Bowl commercials that you're working with. I would like you to cite those commercials in text. In other words, I'm not actually going to require a works cited page here, because if you just say that they are Super Bowl commercials on YouTube, and then if you provide the title of the commercial as it is on that YouTube channel, just look underneath the YouTube video, right, and you can see the title that's there. And also, if you refer to the year of the Super Bowl, this was February 2004, February 2003, whatever. That's more than enough information for someone to be able to go find that exact source. You see what I'm saying? And it'll just be written right there in your paragraph, right, or in your essay. The Super Bowl commercial from fall 2023 about and then you explain it, and then parentheses, you can put the title of the commercial in quotation marks. That's completely okay. At that point, at the bottom, I do not need a URL. That's overshooting the citation requirements, because in today's day and age, I probably just need the name of the commercial. You go on to Google, go to YouTube, find it. Okay, so let's simplify things I'm not going to require a works cited page or section, but I would like you to give me enough information in terms of the title of the commercial and the fact that it's a YouTube commercial and maybe even the date that it was done. That's enough for me to get there and work that into the fabric of your essay. Okay. All right. And you need to do that for at least 3. In fact, okay, here we go. I would like you to learn how to put hyperlinks into your digital file. Okay. And most programs today that you use to write essays, Word or whatever one you're using, will allow you to put a link into your actual work, and you could title the link so that as it shows up in your work, it's just the title of the link, and it's obviously underlined or it's in a different color to indicate it's a live link. But the link doesn't have to be the actual web address, which could include a lot of weird numbers and letters and all of that, right? That's part of the coding of the link, but as it shows up in your text, you can give it a very short name. Okay. You might even be able to make the title of the commercial a link. All right, that'd be the best case scenario. But you're going to have to figure out how to insert a link into your work, and then how to label it, and then also to put the URL address in there. And then you hit, save or whatever, and it should show up on your essay as, a 1 or 2 or 3 word link or the title of the bowl. The commercial, and not just as this long web address. Now, YouTube web addresses usually aren't that long, but still, it'd be better if you had a title to your link. Okay, and that is what showed up in your essay. So that's a little bit of a challenge. It's not that hard to do. If you don't already know how to do it, just ask AI, how do you do this, or ask YouTube or whatever. Ask Google and get a video on how to do it. You can figure this out. Okay. But I would like a link to each one of the commercials you use, just right there in parentheses by the commercial. Okay. Now, you need to summarize the commercials quickly. It could be a 1 or 2 line summary. Okay. But as you're introducing the commercials, just quickly give a quick summary of what it's about. So you can use the summary skills that you're developing that you've developed from the first assignment of writing a summary on Being Green and Ben and Jerry, to do it for the commercials. Now, the commercials are a much smaller item, so a 1 or a 2 sentence summary is fine here, okay? But I would like you to try to summarize the commercials, all right? And then, then you go ahead and move on to your rhetorical analysis and really what I want you to do is I want you to have 3, 4, or 5 commercials. You can have more than that, but don't go to 10. That's too much work for this level of essay. Let's say you have 5, and you know that they all illustrate the rhetorical device of silence. Okay, maybe that's what you're working with. Okay, so now the types of silences they're using might be different, and that's how you can get your length as you describe it, right? But that would be you looking at a collection and finding the common elements of rhetorical analysis that they use, the common rhetorical element, or 2. There could be 2. It might be silence and children. Now that seems to be content driven, but if you have commercials that have very heartwarming moments that involve children, that's a device. That's a device. Think of maybe a commercial that uses puppies or something. The presence of puppies in the commercial. You might find 5 or 6 that do this, and the rhetorical device is playing on our love for puppies and kittens. Okay, and so I want you to find 1 or 2 rhetorical devices that the collection of commercials you've chosen share and together use. I don't want you to just pick 3 or 4 commercials at random and then talk about the rhetorical device in each one of the commercials, and they're all different. So part of this assignment is you being able to see the common element in a group of commercials. That's why I'm saying for this assignment, the group can be small. It could be 3 commercials. I would prefer it to be 4 or 5. A little bit more makes it a little stronger. But as you look at the group, I want you to find one rhetorical device that they all use. which means that you might have to look at 20 Super Bowl commercials before you can find the grouping that shares that one rhetorical device. Okay, so that's what I would like you to do here. So in essence, your essay needs to have at least two sections. Okay, one section where you're introducing the commercials and you're providing the summaries, and then the second section is when you're showing how they group together and how the group uses one or two common rhetorical devices, and then you explain how that works. You don't have to prove anything here. Use your imagination. Come up with a theory that you think you can believe as to why it works. Like, why would this type of music work? And it's hard to prove it, and it's almost, it might be impossible. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't develop a plausible explanation as to what the rhetorical device is and why it works. Just ask yourself, why do you think this would work? And see if you can expand on that, maybe complicate it a little bit, see where you go with it, okay? Two basic sections. Now remember, when I say sections, I'm not saying each one has to have a paragraph. I'm not saying two paragraphs. I'm saying two sections, and you might have one section have two paragraphs and the third one have one, or the first section where you introduce the commercials and the titles and all of that, and the summaries. You might need three paragraphs there, one for each commercial. I don't know, three short paragraphs, and the rhetorical analysis might be two paragraphs. That's five altogether. So when I say sections, I'm not saying each section equals a paragraph. This section might be 1 to 4 paragraphs. You decide. The second section might be 2 to 4 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs. You decide. 2 to 3 paragraphs. I don't know. So don't count the paragraph numbers. I'm just, with the minimum I'm asking for is a minimum of 2 paragraphs. And that to me is not really good division, because then you're lumping all the commercials into one and all the rhetorical analysis into another. What about the closing? What about closing thoughts? What about, 2 to 3 paragraphs would probably be like the minimum. I know that's a little confusing. There is a 2 or 3. Why don't we say 2 being the absolute minimum, but 3 really being the reasonable minimum, and 4 or 5 or 6 being something that's open to you if you need to develop it that way. All right, so that's part of becoming a better writer, is learning how sections work and paragraphs within sections and all of that. So that's one reason, down deep in my heart, I abhor the 5-paragraph essay, because it locks you into a template, and it presents itself as not being flexible, whereas real writing, if you will, never sets out to be locked into that sort of thing. There's an organic development, and the actual end number of paragraphs that you have, it rises naturally from how you are working the text, not because at the beginning you feel that you have to have one paragraph that does this and then 3 main point paragraphs and one at the bottom. That's utterly boring, which is why some of you are at this point bored with this sort of writing, with this sort of class, because an easy way to teach this class is just to lock ourselves into these templates and then just to present them as this is how you write the essay. I mean, you do them once or twice, you got the point. Why do you have to keep on doing them 5 or 6 or 7 times, right? So I can understand the boredom and the questioning here, which is why I'm trying to do a little something different, if you can kind of see it. I'm just an adjunct. I have to earn my own money. I can't be too much of a maverick, or, it's adios horn, and I don't work at the school anymore, So as an adjunct, I'm a freelancer. In other words, I'm not full-time. I'm not part-time. I don't have any sort of long-term contract. It's just a per-term contract. And it's very precarious. There's very little job security. So, I do have to play within the rules of the department, but I can understand how these rules sometimes are counterintuitive. They look like they're going to promote good writing, but actually they do the opposite. They sap it of all creativity, and they turn students that could one day be great writers into people that hate writing. Anyway, I digress. The last thing I want your essay to have, okay, is a 2-tiered title. Now, 2-tiered means main title and subtitle. The main title is your main title. The subtitle is subordinate, So that just means they're not like equals, even though sometimes you present them on the page on the same line. But they have 2 tiers of generality. One is a very general title. The second one is a more specific title. Now, they are separated usually with a colon, okay, the 2 dots on top of each other. Sometimes a dash, sometimes an exclamation mark, but never a comma or a period. Okay, now, again, I could put a video up on two-tier titles, but at this day and age, I don't really need to. I just need you to go and ask AI or Google or Bing or YouTube, or just ask the internet, what is a two-tier title? And you'll see plenty of examples. And you need to do that if you don't know what I'm talking about. But let me give you some examples right now. Now, these are books. Um, many books do have two-tier titles, but the way they distinguish it is the main title is going to be in bigger font, and the subtitle is going to be, smaller letters in a less prominent part of the book's, cover at the bottom or whatever. So Being Mortal is your main title. Now, if I were typing this out or using it as a title of my own, it would be Being Mortal, colon at the end, the two dots right here, and then this would be following it. Okay, Medicine and What Matters in the End. All right, so another one would be Age of Cage. You can see how big that main title is, and then the subtitle is 4 Decades of Hollywood Through One Singular Career. All right, so this would be the first title, then the colon, and then this one follows. Okay, how about the book? This one. All right, main title, subtitle. This time it's at the top, but you can see the smaller font and all that. So you've worked with material that has had two titles for a long time. You've done it. So why don't you give two titles to this essay? Do not call it the rhetorical analysis essay. Okay, now you can use the word rhetorical analysis. Just don't put your title as the rhetorical analysis essay, comma, because automatically you're telling your world that this is an assignment, a school assignment. Now, I know it is. I know that you're getting points for a class, but that's not how real writing works. You don't go and submit something to a magazine and let them know it's a school assignment, right? Now, you can call it a rhetorical analysis, maybe, being smart, so dumb, no, so smart and so dumb. No, so smart yet so dumb, colon. Body humor in modern Super Bowl commercials or something like that. Okay. Bathroom humor in, right? Audience, we're a very smart audience, but we still laugh at, stuff that happens in the bathroom, and maybe commercials are doing that or something. The ones that you picked. So, that's how you, a rhetorical, let's see, so smart yet so dumb. A rhetorical analysis of bathroom humor in modern Super Bowl commercials. Okay, so I can use the words rhetorical analysis in there. In fact, I think you should, because that tells your reader what you're going to do with the essay. But please don't just call it a rhetorical analysis essay, as your title. Okay. Every semester, out of a class of 20, one student does that. Are you going to be the student? Don't be the student, okay? Pay attention to what I'm saying, and don't title it the rhetorical analysis essay, okay? All right. Hey, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it.